Good. Okay, so welcome to Wednesday night evening from me. My name's Dayanatha. I say thank you, Mike Shanita, for that introduction. And what we're going to do now is I'm just going to talk around the topic of, it's a sort of grand title, religion, help or hindrance. But I'm going to sort of break it down to something more, even more relatable, and I'll explain a bit more about that as we go into the talk. And then we'll have a 5-minute break, and then Mike Shanita will come back on and we'll both answer any questions that you may have from the talk. Okay, so this topic really came out of a chapter from a book written by Sangharakshita on a sutra called the Vimalakirti Nirdesa. It's about a sort of a mythical story about an old wise Buddhist man who's very wise, and he, in this particular chapter that they're talking about, he's quite critical of his friends. So he has lots of friends, lots of Buddhist friends, and every time he sees them, he becomes he tells them critical things like, well, why are you saying that? Or you sure you mean that? Or why have you gone there? Or why have you done that? Why are you eating that? For example, we've all got friends like that. Sometimes you have friends that say like, oh, should you really be eating that? Another portion of chips? Or something like that. So, sometimes we sort of scorn at that, don't we? Like, why are you getting involved? Like, stay out. You want to sort of say, stay out of it. Don't get involved. But he's trying to sort of help them as a friend. And I thought we could explore that a bit more, actually, and explore when is it helpful to be critical or not. And anyway, the point about religion is that how it's explained is that he's criticising all these people, but really what he's doing is he's saying that, look, sometimes religion can be unhelpful if you take it too literally. And so we've got to be really, really objective and really critical of something like religion. So we can't just accept it at face value. We have to be able to hear, our friends criticising us, but also we have to be critical of something like religion, and I think we sort of naturally do that anyway in the West. I don't think we're in much danger of that. We're probably more at danger of the other extreme, which is having no meaning, no path at all. But I think we've in the West are very critical of religion, aren't we? We don't really even like the word religion. We don't want to be religious. That's sort of associated, isn't it, with discipline and rules for the sake of rules, and it's very uncool, isn't it, to be religious. And I think, understandably so. I mean, religion over the years has been very dogmatic. It's led to, people being murdered, people feeling, on one extreme being, murdered, basically, the Inquisitions, or lots of different examples. To the sort of other extreme, people just feeling guilty for feeling natural things, for example. People being guilty if they're not following the rules and regulations of religion for its own sake. And of course then people abusing religion for power, the sake of power, which governments have done in the past. So it's understandable. I mean, also sometimes you just sort of brought up, and you might have been brought up in a religion yourself. I don't know which one you were, and you just feel that there's just no meaning here. All right, I'm happy to do all the rituals and things, but what is the point? Where is it getting me? I was brought up in the Jewish tradition, actually, and there's lots of good things about it. There's a good sense of community and lots of ethics and morals, and lots of stuff about generosity and trying to have a meaningful life. But it just didn't work for me. It just wasn't. I just couldn't quite get behind it. I couldn't quite believe, in God particularly, and just sort of. And I couldn't quite believe that this really was the answer. So I was sort of quite sceptical of religion, but I still wanted meaning. I think I still wanted meaning. Don't know about yourself. I still wanted a path to travel down, because I don't know. We all want that. We need something, don't we? I think we have the sort of the habitual, the sort of standard path to travel down. I think is, if we don't have religion, we normally have that. Okay, well. What I'll do is I'll make as much money as I can, and try and get as much pleasure out of life. Maybe that's with a family, maybe that's with a nice holiday home, maybe that's that's with lots of friends, and that's sort of that's the meaning. That's where I get meaning from. It might be your job, your career. Those sorts of worldly things are normally where we just automatically think we're going to get meaning from. We're going to get, but for me that didn't really work actually. As I say, the Jewish thing didn't quite work, and then there was then I thought, okay, well, what would work is, why don't I just be a doctor? Because that surely will give you meaning, because it's helping people, it's a good income, it's well respected, there's a pathway of training, it's vocational. That's going to give me meaning. My Trinita, who you just saw, she's a health visitor as well. She was trained as a midwife. So maybe she thought, I don't know if you can tell you later, maybe she thought something similar, something like, look, this is going to do it for me. But if she's anything like me, which I'm sure she is, both being ordained, we probably both feel that, it's not enough. It's sort of, there needs to be something more, because it's not really addressing reality objectively. It's sort of helping people, yes, but it's not sort of the full picture. Being a doctor, so I felt like I needed the full picture. Like, life wasn't giving me enough. For example, I'd go to dinner parties with my friends and think, oh, this is quite fun, but surely there's got to be something more than dinner parties, or the sort of superficial chat that we could get into, or surely there's got to be some way of talking about, why is it that everything's changing all the time, or why is it that sometimes I feel good, sometimes I feel bad? Why is it that good things happen in life, and sometimes bad things happen in life? How do I actually sustain a sort of a sense of calm when everything's changing, when unfortunately things happen, like my relatives have died recently, for example, or COVID happens? How do we maintain a sense of objectivity, of calm in amongst that? And I definitely wasn't getting that answer from friends and family. It was sort of like we were fueling each other's anxiety, almost the opposite. So I needed a community that wouldn't do that, that would be able to talk about the real things in life without fueling the anxiety, I think. So that's sort of what drew me to Buddhism in the first place. And Buddhism, and that might have drawn you as well, I bet, that sense of trying to get meaning, I think, as well. And I think people say, is Buddhism a religion or not? And it depends what you mean by religion. If you sort of define religion as a framework that helps us be free from from our conditioning, free from suffering, helps us find meaning, which then frees us, then I think Buddhism is a religion in that sense. But the thing is, I guess most religions would say they do that. Christianity, most of the religions would claim that they free us, but I think Buddhism particularly, the difference is that Buddhism is a means to an end. It's not the end in itself, and I think that's the difference, and that's really important. So if we're religious just for its own sake, then that's not freedom. That's just sort of shackling us in a sort of group where we feel guilty, or we have to follow things for its own sake, and it loses the spirit of what we're trying to do, which is we're trying to get towards freedom, towards meaning, towards objectivity, aren't we? We're trying to sort of get to we're trying to get objectivity in the world, because the world's full of lots of feelings, lots of emotion, lots of anger, for example. We're trying to find out what is true. Where do we put our energy? What is really true? And without that, it's very difficult. Without religion, without an objective framework, it's very difficult to find out what is objective. And you can easily lose the spirit of it. So the spirit of Buddhism is trying to help us be free, as I say, helping us be objective. But if we're not careful, we can even take Buddhism literally. We can even take Buddhism literally, and that isn't going to help either. For example, we can use Buddhism as an end itself. For example, you could take ethics literally. So what I mean by that is you sort of, instead of the spirit of ethics, like for example, take compassion or loving kindness. That's a great ethic, and we all need to have more loving kindness. But sometimes you can take it literally, and then it loses its meaning. You all know the angry vegan. Have you met the angry vegan? It could even be yourself, maybe at certain times. It's where this is based on what's called righteous indignation, where you feel justified in, or a friend feels justified in being angry about something that you think needs, something that you think needs your weight behind. For example, if you're with a group of friends and someone's eating meat and you become angry at them because you feel justified in that, that to you feels like it's justified, but actually Buddhism would say that anger is never justified, and our hatred is never justified. So if you're vegan and you're full of ill will, then actually you're not really vegan, in the sense that you're cultivating ill will rather than love. Even though your friend unfortunately is eating meat, and maybe you don't agree with that for the right reasons, but to the extent that you have ill will towards them is the extent that you're no longer vegan, if you're no longer compassionate, you're no longer coming from the first precept, which is love for all beings. You're sort of hating them, and that's a sort of good example of taking ethics literally. So you're taking sort of ethics instead of the spirit of it, which is compassion for all beings, including, fortunately, beings that you don't agree with. And the same could be said for, there's lots of injustices in the world which isn't right, and we do need to do something about it. But to the extent, again, that we approach injustices with anger or hatred, is the extent that, again, we're just adding to the problem with the problem of ill will and negativity, rather than bringing a positive mind to the problem. And I'm talking about anger that's sort of infused with ill will. I mean, you can get a sort of an anger that's sort of just energy, but I'm talking more about the sort of anger that leads to violence, that leads to harmful speech, that sort of that's not good for us. That leaves us just ruminating at the end of our tether. So that's not good. So we need to be more always in touch with the spirit of ethics, the spirit of Buddhism. Remember where it's trying to take us, and not get lost in the detail, in the sort of, I don't know, the sort of the literalism of it. I remember that sort of example growing up as well, especially in the Jewish tradition. For example, you're meant to rest on the Sabbath, for example, which I think that's a brilliant spirit. It's good to have one day where you rest, but because of that, there are lots of rules and regulations that came out of that. For example, you shouldn't be carrying anything on the Sabbath, because obviously that's work and you need to be resting, which again, I think that's a good rule if you want to follow that. But what people used to do, which used to amuse me a bit, was they used to sort of get around that rule by, for example, attaching things to carry to their clothes, so that they weren't actually carrying them, they were wearing them. So, for example, like a bunch of keys, you're not allowed to carry them, but if you wear them on the belts on the Sabbath, then that's okay. Now, obviously that's fine if that's your choice and you want to do that, but what I'd be sort of trying to say to you is that really following the spirit of it, is that just trying to get around a rule for the sake of getting around it? Wouldn't it be better just to follow the spirit of that? That's just an example, I'd say, from my own personal background growing up. There's lots of examples of that probably in our own lives, where we do something because it's routine or rote, and not because we sort of, we sort of lose the spirit of it. As I say, the ethics one is an example as well. So I think what we need to be able to sort of stay on the path to be able to keep this objectivity is our friends to help us. Well, we need to be able to be critical, I think, ourselves. I think to be critical, what does work, what path does work for us. We can't just, unfortunately, if we just go about our lives just sort of trying lots of different paths and that's our whole life, I don't think it's going to work. I really don't think it's going to work. I think we need to be critical and discerning. Yes, okay, try a few different ones at first, but once you've found one that you really think works, sort of commit to that path, stick to it, and use your critical faculties to sort of understand why that path will help or why that path is true and will help you. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll never really get to the depth of the meaning of the objectivity we're trying to get to. For example, it's some incredible news today that the UK is the first country in the world to approve the vaccine for COVID. And we've done it in a record time, within 10 months. And now I can guarantee that the fact that that's come out so quickly, the way we've done it, has been through our critical faculties. So we've had to really be really critical which vaccine works, which vaccine doesn't work. It's had to be through scientists saying, look, that's not going to work, this one is going to work. It's had to be through taking risks, through putting a lot of energy behind something. It has to be through committing to a project. Probably those scientists have been working night and day to get that vaccine out. And and it's amazing that we've got the results now of the vaccine. But it wasn't, I guarantee it wasn't through people saying, I'll tell you what, we'll just try a bit of this one for a few months, try a bit of this one for a few months, try a bit of this one. It was like, I'm going to choose one vaccine and try that. I'm going to take that through all the way to the production stage. And that has produced results, hasn't it? And now that we've got the vaccine, you wouldn't want to try lots of different vaccines. You just want to try the one vaccine that works. And then that will help you. So that's sort of a metaphor, I think, for Buddhism. I think so. You want to really try and find a path that works for you. And then when you do find that path, you just put all your energy into that path, and then you'll get results more rather than sort of spreading out your energies. So I thought that was interesting. And again, it's your friends who can help you be critical in that way and sort of help you decide what path does work for you. Are you doing that right? Are you meditating? How is your meditation, for example? What are your views on that area? How are your ethics? Are you being objective in that situation at work, for example? Are you being objective in this way or not? It's your friends who can help you be critical, and through the critical faculties we can then, as I say, progress. And I've really benefited from that. For example, living in a community at the LBC, lots of people have been helping me with my own practice, and I've really benefited from that, if you sort of mean. So I think the key is to not be scared of criticism, of trying to, well, first of all, thinking about something yourself, but also not being scared of friends being critical to you. And what I mean by critical is doing it in a friendly way that's helpful. I don't mean sort of any ill will. I don't mean sort of having a power relationship. I just mean a really good friend being able to say to you, look, I'm sorry, but that wasn't great when you did that, or can you put more enthusiasm into that? Can you put more energy into that? What's going on for you? I'm concerned about you. I think that's really important. We need to be critical. We need to be critical of religion, of the path. We need to be critical of Buddhism, but we need to be also mostly critical about our own practice and our own behaviour, because we're going to be coming at it from a subjective point of view, and we need help, I think, to be objective. And that's really what the Buddha represents, is like ultimate objectivity. That time sometimes when you really want someone to be objective, it's such a relief, isn't it, when For example, when say you're getting into an argument with friends, sometimes all you wish for is like, can somebody just come up with the answer, the truth to the argument. What is the truth? Often we don't really even know in an argument. But if you had the truth to a situation, it's a relief. For example, Buddhism says something like, the more possessions you have, probably the happier you'll be, because you're collecting lots of different possessions. The more simple a life you can have, the easier you'll be, the easier your mind will be. So then you can think, do I agree with that or not? And does my life look like that or not? But of course the Buddha represents objectivity in that sort of way. He lived a very simple life, for example. So as I say, it's a relief to have the answers sometimes to questions, from the Buddha. So just to sort of bring it back to the theme, so we're talking, just to remind you where we're going, so we're talking about, is religion helpful or not? Then I've talked about we need to be critical of religion in a sort of that positive way and really think, does it work or not? And we can't be scared of being critical either, because being critical can lead us to the right answer. And also we have to welcome criticism from friends in a sort of that friendly way that I'm talking about. Just because that's, if you do have wise friends that can help you, then that will save a lot of time. Because often we just sort of we do going down blind paths that aren't working, and it's sort of a waste of our life, a waste of our time. So a good critic actually saves us time, doesn't it? Saves us our life. That's why I think like film critics are so popular, for example. Before you see a film, you'd go online and you look at a film critic, and what you're trying to do there is think, is this film going to be a waste of my life, or is it actually going to give me the 2 hours of joy and pleasure or not? And then we in that case we'll go to critics to find out the answer. So can we have that approach with our friends, for example, and with our own practice? How's it going? Any feedback for me, for example, could say. I think that the point is, with that that might be quite challenging, and I'm not sort of playing that down. I mean, it is very uncomfortable to open yourself up to feedback. I've just had some feedback at work, for example, recently, and it is very uncomfortable. I've talked about that before. But it's very growthful, and I appreciated it because people that care about me and want me to grow. And it's the same with friends, but it is uncomfortable. But for any sort of path to have gains, I think you do need to go through some uncomfortability, and we do need to be challenged, and that's what Buddhism often gets a sort of image of. Being about being calm and being about being loving, which it is, and those are important actually, even when we talk about criticism. But the reason why we're calm and compassionate is so that we can really look at reality, including our own reality, our own behaviours, for example. And then that bit is uncomfortable, unfortunately, but we really need to do it, otherwise we'll just get stuck. We'll just be a sort of a happier, sort of calmer version of ourselves, which is good, but we won't be able to really transcend ourselves and really see life as it really is if we don't go the extra mile, sort of go to that uncomfortable bit. And that could be feedback from friends, it could be you going on a retreat, for example. You don't really need to have feedback to find meditation or Buddhism uncomfortable. It could just be you go on a retreat, and there's lots of good parts to it, but suddenly you're confronted with your mind, and you have to sit there for a long time in stillness, and you've got your mind, like Maitreya was saying at the beginning, lots of hindrances, lots of different parts of ourselves. That's, take it from me, and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, that's not comfortable a lot of the time, but I always feel it's growthful. It's a good thing to do. It's beneficial because I'm building up the habits of working with my mind, working with the sort of stronger emotions, and turning my mind towards reality, which is always beneficial. So that might be challenging, but it's what we need to be doing, if you see what I mean. So if we're not doing that, then why not? And again, are we open to criticism from friends about our own practice in that way? Like, are we spending all our annual leave going on holiday rather than a retreat, for example, which is always the option I have found on annual leave. Like, I'd really like to go to a beach for 2 weeks, and then Maichi Bandhu might say, or Paramandhu, have you been on solitary? I'm like, no, I don't want to go on solitary. I'll be on my own. Like, that's the point. And then I do take their advice. And recently, I have been on solitary, and it was wonderful. It was just what I needed for solitary. My meditation went deeper than it's ever been. I was very, very grateful for my friends for advising me to do that. So that's what I think we need friends for, to help us on the path and to help us with this critical faculty of, is this sort of religion, is this path working? Because the path itself can be a framework to help us go deeper. So it's not like we need to throw out religion in itself. We just need to throw out that literalism that I was talking about. We need to throw out seeing it as an end in itself. We need to instead come in contact with the spirit of religion, the spirit of friendship, of questioning, of deepening, that I was talking about. And and I think if hopefully that resonates with you a bit, and you might want to ask yourself, well, how, do I find Buddhism challenging? And maybe we can talk about this in the second half. Do I find meditation challenging? Do I find the idea of sort of joining a religion, of want for a better word, or even joining Buddhism challenging? Do I just want to keep all my options open and not really commit? And that's, maybe you do, and that's something we can talk about. Do I sort of shy away from criticism, either helping friends with criticism or accepting criticism? Do I sort of just want to sort of the quiet life, or not? Or would you be up for going there? Do you want to go there? That's the thing. Do you want to really sort of go to those depths or not? And I think that's the question. And yeah, of course we can't be doing that the whole time, because it's tiring if you're sort of getting feedback all the time. But I think you do need to be asking yourself, am I at least doing that some of the time with friends, for example? And often, in a funny way, that deepens friendship. When you're having real conversations about your practice, it's a way to deepen friendship, even though it might be uncomfortable talking about more uncomfortable areas. So I think those are some sort of questions for you to think about, and just really think: am I seeing this path as a way of developing my ignorance towards wisdom? Do I feel like I'm a bit more objective about the world? So you sort of want, just to finish, you want to sort of end with a sort of test, don't you? I think you want to test your practice, because sometimes you can go through life down any path and not really be testing, is this working or not? So what are the signs that a spiritual path is working for you? So that's the sort of way of seeing whether you're being critical enough or not, I think. So, for example, how is your ethics? So are you just more generous? Are you more loving? Are you less reactive at work? Is a good place to test it, for example. We know that from working in the NHS. With like patients, for example, can we be more patient with them? Can we sort of, often the sort of challenges, can we not always be thinking about ourselves? So the Buddha represents that true objectivity where there's nothing to do with himself anymore, so he's not thinking about himself. There's no self anyway in that way. So can we sort of try practicing that a bit at work? So, for example, we have a shared inbox of like tasks to do. Now it's very interesting, I don't know if you have this at work, it's a good test. I remember testing reasons. We have a shared inbox. Like, are you the one that just sort of does a few of the tasks in the shared inbox and leaves all the rest for everyone else? Or are you the sort of person that will clear all the inbox for everyone's sake and sort of go beyond yourself? What sort of person are you, if you sort of mean, if you have we have this shared task system, it's like an automatic task system. And you can see some doctors will do more tasks and others won't. Very interesting sort of see. And so situations like that sort of test, I think, our generosity, don't they? Our selflessness at times. So, would you do something to help someone if nobody was looking, or do you only help people if you're going to get sort of positive feedback from it? What are the ethics of the private moment? Subhuti talks about that. So, what are you really like when no one's watching? You're in your bedroom and no one else knows you're doing something. What do you do then? That's the test, isn't it, of our practice? That's the test to see whether it's working, whether we're being critical enough of our practice, whether it's working or not. In a way, are we just more objective about the world? Are we more calm? Are we more positive? Are we doing things for others? I think those will all be good things. And maybe you can think of examples of this. Maybe it'd be good to hear in the chat box, like examples of where you've tested, little examples of how your practice is going from your life. Maybe give us sort of the flavour of that from this week. I've noticed that I'm quite reactive at work, or I'm not as reactive. I've noticed moments where I've been able to be more calm or more positive. That'd be really good to hear if you've got any examples of that, of just sort of testing your practice. Or, as I say, examples of where you feel like you need to be more critical of yourself or friends, or where you feel like you need to be a bit more discerning about, is your practice working or not? Can you commit more to your practice? Can you go deeper with it? I think that would be really good to hear from you. Thank you for listening to that. I hope that's given you some food for thought. So what we'll do now is we'll take a 5-minute break, and then come back at about 8 o'clock. And as I say, myself and Trinita will answer any questions that you have on that theme. And once you've got your cup of tea, do feel free to write your questions. It doesn't have to be sort of a massive question, like a philosophical question. It can just be a comment, even, that was interesting, or I found that interesting, or a sort of clarification. But any sort of feedback from you, we'd really appreciate, just so we can sort of tailor the second half of the session. Thanks very much.
So, welcome.
Is it unmuted?
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the second half of the session. That was a really interesting talk, Dayanatha. So, hopefully we'll have plenty of questions, and if not, we'll just have some questions between us. Okay?
Yes, I think there are already some questions.
Okay. Let's, Jay, let's have the first question, please.
So the first question is from Sophie. You mentioned maintaining objective calm in difficult situations. Is that the goal? What's the difference between that and emotional repression?
So, Sophie's question about objective calm,
yes.
and what's the difference between that and emotional suppression?
Do you want me to do that again?
Yes.
Okay. So Sophie was saying, is that the objective? Is that the goal of Buddhism, to be able to have objective calm in all situations?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not I wouldn't say that's the goal, but I'd say that's an effect. That's the sort of, like, for example, the Buddha, because he's got all this wisdom and is no longer preoccupied with himself, would be able to be calm in even difficult situations, because he's not responding from fear and negativity and sort of fear about himself. He's just sort of lots of energy and lots of compassion. So I think that's what enlightenment does. But I wouldn't say that's the objective, if you see what I mean. I think the objective is, freedom from our suffering, freedom from our suffering, but full objectivity about what reality is. I think that's more the goal, I'd say.
Right.
What would you say? A bit out of that comes calm.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, wouldn't you notice that will you start to notice that in your experience if you're emotionally suppressing something?
Okay.
And that it may not be immediately apparent to you, but I sometimes think we know we can kid ourselves, can't we? Con ourselves into thinking we're not doing it. Sometimes I will feel that in the body, like maybe being more tight or tense or getting a headache or something like that. So that can feel like there's this kind of holding on or something. So that's what I guess I'm interpreting it like
that's
that.
That's a really good point, it's a good point. So you're saying that if you're genuinely calm, if you're not genuinely calm, then you'll feel like this tension, and you'll feel there'll be clues in your body to show you that it's not a genuine calm, it's a repression. I think that's a good way of putting it. And because I think also calm, if it's a genuine calm, it's also always linked with metta. So I think that's probably what you're going to say.
And it feels expansive, isn't it? And open and receptive. And there's just a sense that there's a bit of closing down somewhere that you might notice. But some of us don't have a sense of our bodies either. So it's very hard to always say what's clearly going on for us.
But that's why Sangharakshita, who founded the tradition, was always very clear that metta is really important. So because he saw this sort of thing, like when people coming off retreats in the 60s, very sort of aware, but alienated from their experience. And he was like, no, that's not it. So you need metta, you need emotional positivity. So if you've got the both, that's good. So I think basically exactly what you said. Very good question though, really good question. Thank you.
Next question.
Yes,
from
please.
Oliver.
Hello, Oliver.
What about if we do things for others because we derive pleasure from this ourselves? Is this still a pure thing to do?
I don't see what's wrong with that. We got mixed motives, don't we? We have mixed. The Buddhists, and even Sangharakshita talks about while we're practicing, while we're trying to become free, our motives are always mixed. So I feel that the action helps.
That's it.
The action helps. So whether it, I'd rather do the action and know that it's mixed and then not do it at all just because I'm scared that I haven't got I'm not pure in my in my intention.
That's a good point. And I guess that's coming back to the talk. I guess that's why having spiritual friends who can help you is really important. So if you are a bit like, should I do this or not? They can say, look, just do it. As you say, if it's helping people, even though you sort of think you've got mixed motives, they'll be able to guide you and sort of help you be a bit more critical about, is this, where is this coming from? What's my intentions? But as you say, we're always going to have mixed motives. And actions can actually make your motives purer in the end, can't they? So if you sort of, that feeling sometimes, I really don't want to do that nice thing for that person, don't want to get them a present, can't be bothered. And then you know what, I'll just do it, give them the flowers, whatever, and then you feel better. And so the action has, in a way, generated a real, genuine positive emotion in you through that, and that's okay as well, isn't it? That's fine.
Because you never know what your we don't know what our actions will bring as well.
That's right.
And I guess, we're talking about, we're both in the NHS. That looks very altruistic, but it's got its competitiveness, it's got its hierarchy, it's got its authority. And yet they do save lives. They bring life into the world. They find new things, new health things. We're talking COVID.
Good point. I mean, I don't go to work just because I want to help people 100%. I also want to get paid. So I also, enjoy work. So unfortunately, we all have mixed motives. But I'm trying to, as I say, be more patient at work, for example, bring in Buddhist qualities so that the majority of my day comes from a sort of positive place, rather than going down the track of, like, as you say, like just trying to go down a career and go up the ladder for the sake of the money and the power or whatever. I'm trying to bring in Buddhist values so that it's more, intentions are more pure. So I'm sure you're doing the same. Okay, thank you, Oliver. Good question. Nice to see you, Oliver, as well.
So we've got a question from Mercia.
Mercia.
You mentioned that in certain religions, guilt is somehow used as fuel. What does Buddhism say about guilt?
From what I understand of it, I feel like, or the interpretation of it, guilt is an unhelpful mental state, because it doesn't really lead to.
That's right. Yeah.
It just leaves you stagnant, and I feel fearful, and it doesn't really shift anything. But there's also free, isn't there? Shame. There's positive shame in Buddhism, and that's where you've really realised that you've done something that's had an impact, probably unskillful or difficult impact on somebody else or a situation, and you really start to feel sorry about it. And it looks like it's called positive shame, isn't it? So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah.
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much, Nisha. That's true. And I guess just to add to that, the difference is that so with guilt, it's an erotic negative emotion which is based on you feeling that you've lost contact with the group. So, or you feeling like you've lost something, like for example you've lost approval from the group. For example you've turned up late and you've ruined a whole evening or something, and then you get disapproval from the group and you feel guilty because you think you might have lost your friends, and it's affected, as in like you feel guilty. And it's negative because you're worried about yourself. As in you're worried that you've lost your friends. You're not sort of thinking about the effect it's had on your friends or what you can do better next time. You're just thinking, worrying about you. That's guilt. And that's what, as you say, some religions can manifest in us. Whereas that's different from positive shame, which is you saying, look, you know what, it just wasn't great turning up late at that time. I'm just going to try and do better next time. Which is really positive because you're trying to improve yourself.
Yeah.
Look, we all make mistakes, or we all don't do well, but look, I'm just going to try and do better next time for the sake of others. I feel sorry for them. I'm sorry that I did that. That's more positive, isn't it? Whereas feeling like, oh my God, are they going to like me? Are they never going to invite me again? That's sort of neurotic and guilty.
Yeah, it's very critical, isn't it? And it's,
right.
I think it's got some encouragement in it, and it feels like it's kinder to you and to your response to that experience. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, thanks. Really good question. Yeah, really good question tonight. Thanks, Miss. Yeah. We've got some really good questions coming through.
Yeah. Anything else?
Rachel asks, any tips for finding a community of friends to foster the accountability? And commas she's put, for those of us who aren't a member of an order.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Where do you live? Can you just put in the chat box, Rachel, where are you from? Sorry. What? Yeah.
No. I'm gonna let
right.
you.
Sorry.
I'm gonna let you talk there.
So Rachel's just saying, where do you find a group of friends that will give you that sort of spiritual friendship that I was talking about, and give you that sense of criticalness that you need in your practice? And I think the obvious answer is here. But you don't need to be, I think she was talking about order members, so you don't need to be an order member to have a community or to practice Buddhism. So especially here in Triratna, we encourage anybody can come and practice. So whether you're new or whether you've been practicing many years, and as soon as you come, especially when we're more open, which hopefully we will do. We've got the vaccine now, so hopefully we'll be more open at some point. You'll just get a sense that you'll just meet people, you'll make friends. And especially if you go on retreat as well, you'll make friends, and then you've got an instant group. You can then join a study group, and then you can also then make it more official by becoming a mitra, which means a friend of the centre. And then, if then you decide that you do want to make Buddhism the centre of your life, and commit to Buddhism, then that's when you would get ordained. That's what ordination basically means. You're at the point where you say, look, I want Buddhism to be the primary thing in my life, and everything sort of comes out of that. And then, of course, you can lead a different life. It doesn't matter what your lifestyle is, or where you live, or etc., what you do, but it's more, to some extent, it's more that you're saying you're putting Buddhism at the centre of your life, and that's why we've got here, and that's why we're sort of volunteering tonight, because we try to put Buddhism at the centre of our life.
Yeah.
Take it into our jobs, for example, at work. How does that?
Yeah. Also, we've got the power of Zoom, and we've got a wonderful winter retreat coming up on the 27th of December.
Yeah.
If you're far away, that's it works actually. It does. It does work as a way of connecting. You may have found that already, but that's a start. At least a start. Think about coming on the winter retreat.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. Yeah, online from the 27th, isn't it?
Yeah, 27th of December.
Yeah, and I'll be leading meditation actually all that week, and the morning before it as well. So there's lots of
8 o'clock slot.
So there's lots of things you can do in the moment. I think you'll find friends. If you and so it's that thing with friendship as well. You often people say like, I wish I had more friends, but of course it's the other way around, isn't it? So you want to be saying, I wish I could be more friendly. So it comes from us, isn't it? It comes from you, it comes from me. So if I want friends, I have to go out to people and sort of ask them how they are and like be interested in them, and then I get friends, if you sort of mean. It can't be the other way around, or it's never going to work. So that's an interesting point. But anyway, I'm sure you.
Yeah, it's an act of moving towards, isn't it?
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
And keep the metta practice, isn't it?
Right.
Metta practice helps us to be more friendly.
That's it.
It's a friendship practice, so the more you practice that. I've been listening to a talk, Padmavajra, talking about the sense that friendship can be a magnet for more friendship, because practicing the metta or practicing spirit in a spiritual context through mitras or just coming along, gradually over time that kind of sense, the atmosphere of friendship grows and it attracts more and more and more. So I don't know if that, anyway, if that's an idea, really.
Rachel lives in London.
Okay, so close by, so definitely come along when you can. In the meantime, we've got the Zoom. Great. Any other questions?
No questions.
No more questions. Okay. No, that's good time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jade, for fielding the questions, and thank you to everybody for bringing the questions so that we could explore that. So really stimulating and really interesting questions, and more food for thought outside of here as well. Reflecting on them a bit longer. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about Dharma, generosity, which is another part of our practice together here at the centre, and part of ethics, part of going beyond ourselves, selflessness. So as you know, we're in lockdown, and the London Buddhist Centre really needs your support, particularly through this erratic time of sometimes we're open and sometimes we're shut, and that has an effect on how financially stable we are here. So if you can, please consider giving us a donation, either a one-off donation. The cost of the class is about, is it £10? You give what you can, or really consider doing a direct debit or standing order regularly to Triratna and the London Buddhist Centre, just so that we can continue to make this building available, have the teachers available to continue to explore the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Yeah. So Jay would have put the link in the chat. So please, if you can, do give. It's part of our moving towards being just a little less a bit more selfless. So
thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to end with a little bit of meditation again.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And really thank you for the really stimulating and really interesting talk on religion and how we practice, and really interesting around testing practice, exploring it, because that's what the Buddha's about, testing our practice, not just taking on things just because other people have done it before. So great, thank you.
Just turn that light down, Jay. Yeah.
So if you can just settle yourselves back into whatever posture feels comfortable for you, but will also help you be alert as well. Yeah. And Jay will just turn down the lights a little. And if you want to, just bring in your gaze towards the shrine, bringing your gaze towards beauty, in the terms of the flowers, the candlelight, the stillness of the Buddha, that image of, that brings, I always think, I used to see lots of Buddhas in people's gardens, and there's still a sense of stillness there that it brings that. Something about that it communicates. So when you're ready, just closing your eyes if you wish to. Just taking a deep breath in and a breath out. And just letting the sound of the bell help you become absorbed. So letting the sounds come in and watching them or hearing them fade away. Sounds are always arising, getting to a certain heightened point and then fading away. And noticing your body in contact with the mats and the cushions and your chair. The weight of your body in contact with the ground. And just exploring how you feel right now. Again, noticing your breath in your body, the feel of that breath in your body, expanding against your clothes, your body expanding into your clothes and then shrinking away from them. And just bringing your attention to the colours beneath your eyelids, the shifting colours. The sense of taste on your tongue. The coolness or warmth of the air against your skin. And just noticing the breath. Just bringing a kind attention to the breath as you breathe in and you breathe out. Nothing to do but just feel the breath coming in, maybe through your nose, cool air coming in, and being transformed into the breath, and a warm breath leaving our bodies. And just the journey of our breath, the cool air, journey into our nasal passages and through our throat, into our lungs and all the organs of our body, and the energy that's picked up along the way. And that comes out as this warm breath. And this breath that moves between all of us, all living things. And every breath that enters our body is always new. Always a fresh start. And always the mystery of that. keeping on being kind to however the breath presents, welcoming it in all its forms. Deep or shallow, tight or expansive. Just letting everything in and everything out. And beginning to let go of any effort to notice the breath or anything about your experience. Just letting go. And as I ring the bell, opening your eyes. Thank you, Jay. And thank you to everyone for coming tonight, and thank you very much to Dayanatha for exploration of religion. And thank you all for turning up and being with us tonight. So I wish you well and wish you a great week. Thank you.
Thank you, Majunita, as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.